Now we're going to ask you to stand.
That's good. I was going to ask you to stand anyhow. I was going to have you all stand. I thought if you're just tired, I said that's okay. If you're not feeling good, that's okay. And you say, Mike, I don't want to stand up. I want to sit down. That's okay too. All right. So you guys could stand.
Barracuda to my humble rock. Let's make this declaration. This is my Bible.
This is my Bible.
God's holy word.
God's holy word.
I have what it says I have.
I have what it says I have.
And I boldly confess.
I boldly confess.
I intend to live my life.
I intend to live my life
according to His word.
according to His word.
This morning I have ears to hear.
This morning I have ears to hear.
Eyes to see.
Eyes to see.
And a heart that's receptive.
And my heart is receptive.
And I'm not leaving the same.
Not leaving the same.
Never ever.
Never ever.
Amen.
Amen.
You can be seated.
I'm not going to have you. I was going to have you stand because, and thank you, Steve, because that was part of it. I wanted you to stand because part of our Torah portion is not Savim, Violet. That's okay. You don't have to stand. That's okay. Sit down. That's okay. You already stood. The reason why I was going to have you stand is because not Savim. I was like, God, what is this? He said, not Savim. Where is this at? This is standing, but it's plural. I am at the end of not Savim. Then I found it. It's one's standing. Interesting, in 1991, we have any country music fans in here? Okay. Aaron Tippin. You gotta stand for something or you fall for anything. Amen. Well, in 1903, there was a book that came out around this date too, and it was called The Protocols of the Elders of Zion. And it was published and it was used by the Nazi propaganda machine for the final solution against the Jews. I think on this date, it was in September of 1903. They stood for something, didn't they? They stood for the wrong thing. The root word of Natsavim is Natsav. It means to stand with a purpose. And in Deuteronomy 29, Israel was standing before Moses. And Moses had been given a message by God, and he was delivering the message to Israel. We stand for the Torah processional. We stand for the national anthem. And in this group, it was a group, it was community, but it was also every individual was there. There were men, women, there were children, hired hands, there were foreigners, there were slaves, all kinds of people were there, and they were hearing. So Moses was speaking to them individually by God's power, but he's also speaking to them collectively as a community. And in Galatians 3:28, we're told there's neither Jew nor Gentile. And here, everybody was receiving this promise. And they were also receiving the curse that they didn't obey. They were standing as one nation. One nation. And the idea here of Netzav, or Natsavim, is it has to do with an army, a pillar, a station. And Paul quotes, if you go on to Deuteronomy, he quotes in, I think it's in Galatians 3:28. No, it's in, Romans 9:8, interesting thing here, and I'll make this one point, is that he quotes Deuteronomy 30, verse 14. And it says, but the word is very near you, in your mouth and in your heart, that you may do it. But why, over in Romans, does he say, but what does it say? The word is near you, in your mouth and in your heart. My question is, why doesn't he say you can keep it? I'm going to just leave that to you. I'm going to leave you hanging there. That's just one of those mysteries I find often about God and in His Word. I don't have answers for anything. It's a mystery. It's a mystique, and that's okay. It just makes me wonder. It makes me go, wow. It's like Jerry and I talk about this all the time. He said, why on Shabbat? He says, your word brings on the evening. Baruchu et Adonai Baruch Le'olam Vayed. What is that about that? It brings on the evening. What's that mystery about? It just makes me go, there's no answer. And I don't want the answer. I don't want the answer. I didn't want to even wonder about this. Anyway, so what do we find out from this? We can't do it. can't do it. But we had one who did. And that's where I'm going to leave off. I'm going to come back to this. I'm going to let Jerry take over with Violet.
It was interesting that today was actually a double portion reading, Nitzavine and Violet. And Steve talked about the double portion with Ephraim and Manasseh, and that's funny because that's a portion of where I'm going today anyway. Balak, he went. When I started thinking about this, I'm going, okay, he went. Obviously, we're going to discuss Moses some more. No, we're not. When it gets to the portion that I'm taking over and talking on today, that was after the Lord had already told Moshe, you are not going to cross over into the promised land. It will be someone else. I'm going, okay, then what is it he went? Moshe went as far as the Jordan and was not allowed to cross over any further. Yehoshua is who actually led the people on across the Jordan and into the promised land. But to me, the major he went was the fact that no matter where, from the beginning of the Exodus right up to crossing the Jordan, it was Adonai himself that went. He went before Moshe and the people. He went before Yehoshua and Caleb and the people. The big he went in all of this is Adonai himself. I'm going to talk a little bit about Joshua. I find the teaching on Joshua very interesting. I'm going to read from Devarim 31:1-3. Moshe went and spoke the following words to all of Israel. I am 120 years old today. I can't get around any longer. Moreover, Adonai has said to me, you will not cross the Jordan. Adonai your God, he will cross over ahead of you. He will destroy these nations ahead of you, and you will dispossess them. Yehoshua, he will cross over ahead of you, as Adonai has said. Next Moshe summoned Yehoshua, and in the sight of all Israel said to him, be strong, be bold, for you are going with this people into the land Adonai swore to their ancestors he would give them. You will be the one causing them to inherit it, but Adonai, it is he who will go ahead of you. He will be with you. He will neither fail you nor abandon you, so don't be afraid or downhearted. Adonai said to Moshe, the time is coming for me to die. Summon Yehoshua and present yourselves in the tent of meeting so that I can commission him. Moshe and Yehoshua went and presented themselves in the tent of meeting. The one thing that I found interesting about Yehoshua was that his name was not originally Yehoshua. His original name, his birth name was Hosea. We read in Numbers 13, Adonai said to Moshe, send men on your behalf to reconnoiter the land of Canaan, which I am giving to the people of Israel. From each ancestral tribe, send someone who is a leader in this tribe. Moshe dispatched them from the Paran desert, as Adonai had ordered. All of them were leading men among the people of Israel. Here are their names. I'm not going to give all of them. I'm just going to go a certain way down. From the tribe of Reuben, Shemua, the son of Zakur. From the tribe of Shimon, Shaphat, the son of Hori. From the tribe of Yehuda, Caleb, the son of Yephuneh. From the tribe of Yisachar, Yigal, the son of Yosef. From the tribe of Ephraim, Hosea, the son of Nun. Now I'm skipping over to 16. These are the names of the men Moshe sent out to reconnoiter the land. Moshe gave Hosea, the son of Nun, the name Yehoshua. The name that Moshe gave Yeshua means God is our salvation. The root word for Yehoshua and Yeshua are the same root word. It's a derivative of the same name. Yehoshua proclaims that God is our salvation. Yeshua claims it for himself. I am salvation. One proclaims the name, one claims the name. I found it interesting also that Hosea's name meant help. They changed his name from being one that helps to one that is called of God, that declares that God is our salvation. Ephraim, which was the tribe that Yehoshua came from, means fruitful. Yehoshua was the younger son of, Ephraim was the younger son of Joseph. He was the grandson of Jacob. They were promised the inheritance and to be fruitful and to multiply, which I find interesting because Ephraim means fruitful. They were commanded, you will be greater than all the sands in the sea. It'll be uncountable. The grains of sands will not be able to be counted. Those is what your ancestors, your descendants will be. It is also the northern kingdom of Israel after the kingdom of Solomon was divided. The main thing about Jehoshua that I found interesting is his last name. His last name was Nun. He was Jehoshua, the son of Nun. Nun not only is a last name, it's a verb meaning to propagate or increase, to multiply. We read in Deuteronomy 35, Adonai your God will bring you back into the land your ancestors possessed, and you will possess it. He will make you prosper there, and you will become even more numerous than your ancestors. Then Adonai your God will give you more than enough in everything you set out to do. The fruit of your body, the fruit of your livestock, and the fruit of your land will all do well. For Adonai will once again rejoice to see you do well, just as he rejoiced in your ancestors. Interesting thing about the last name Nun. The surname Nun begins with a Nun, has a Vav in the middle, and ends with a Nun. When I was researching this out, it was interesting to me that any time in Hebrew that a word reading right to left begins with Nun and ends with Nun, the first Nun is bowed. It looks as though there's a bowing in the letter. The final Nun in any word is always an upright Nun. And when I was researching, the bent Nun refers to the faithful one. What was Yeshua when he left heaven and came to earth? He humbled himself, bent himself. He came to earth. How was he with his disciples when he humbled himself? He became a bent servant, as in heaven. When he ascended into heaven, who was he? He was the righteous, upright one. In the surname Nun, you see the bent servant and you see the upright servant. That was Yehoshua's last name. The letter Nun, not only is Nun a surname, it's also the 14th consonant in the Hebrew alphabet. It's a verb meaning to propagate or increase, to multiply. 14 is also representative of King David and the kingdom of David. There were 14 generations from Abraham to David. There were 14 generations from David to the exile in Babylon. There were 14 generations from the exile to Yeshua. So we see in the surname Nun, you could do a 3-hour teaching on this and there probably still wouldn't be enough time. We're just trying to touch on some of the highlights. The gematria for the letter Nun is the number 50. 50 is symbolic of wisdom. Solomon was 50 years old when he came to power and reigned in the temple. 50 years is also a Jubilee year. And we, as Jews and Gentiles who celebrate the feast, we understand what the Jubilee year is. It was 50 days from Exodus to the giving of Torah. I just found it so interesting that not only was his surname a letter, his surname was also one that is representative of all the aspects of Yeshua in one surname. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Mike.
I went a little different direction with the Torah portion because in reading, I found something really amazing, and it goes along with the Nun. If we can have that back up there, Chief. Thank you. My take on it is,
Use your mic.
all right, is that I didn't go to Luke 24. I read that, but I looked at Acts 7:55, and Jerry touched upon this. That Stephen, while he was being stoned, and there was Saul standing there, and the men says that they came and laid their garments at Saul's feet while Stephen was being stoned, and he looked up to heaven. He saw the glory of God. He saw Yeshua standing at the right hand of the Father. If my reading is correct, the only place that is found at is in Acts 7:55. My contention is Yeshua was the bent, the humble servant. He was flogged. He was contorted on a cross. But I told Jerry this yesterday, it hit me all at one time. Yeah. She was in tears, and I was too. I got up and went over to her, and I said, Peter, do this, you have no part in it. The crown, he wore, he bent over in front of Peter and washed his feet. She was a tear. Oh my gosh.
It's interesting in the surname Noon that there's a crown at the top of each of the letters. One representing the bent servant and the one representing the upright servant. Each one is wearing a crown. So that just ties in with what Mike was saying. I'm going to end with a little bit of a history lesson. I don't know how many history nuts there are in here beside me. If you're a history nut, raise your hand. I love history. This is going to be a little bit about modern history. About 18 months ago, some of you may have seen it, I was watching a program on PBS. It was called Unmasking ISIS. I don't know if anybody else saw it but me. It was about a 3-night presentation. And the one thing that they made, that they came out, a point that they came out with was that ISIS brands Christians. When they capture a Christian, they actually brand them. And I'm thinking, whoa, what's that all about? They didn't really say what the branding was, but just that they branded the Christians, and they were comparing it to Nazi Germany when Hitler would tattoo the Jews. They were making that comparison. I'm going, whoa, what is that all about? But they never really said what that branding was. As I was studying out the surname Noon this week, I ran across an article in Wikipedia, of all places, and it talked about when ISIS captures Christians, they brand them. And they brand them with the name Noon. Because the symbol of the name Noon is a fish, which is symbolic of all Christianity. I just thought that that was amazing, that when I finally found what I was looking for. But I'm saying all that to say that they call this, we know that Jesus was from Nazareth. He was a Nazarite. They call the Noon that they brand onto the captured Christians the mark of the Nazarite. So that's just, I want to end with that. That's just kind of a little bit of a history lesson for any of you. But it's just, like I said, we could go on and on for hours on just these two little portions of Scripture, but there's not enough time. I just want to encourage all of you to really dive into the Word, dive into the Torah portion every week. You'll all be amazed. It's just one door opens, another door opens, another door opens, another door. I just want to encourage all of you to start doing that and be blessed.
Amen.
Hallelujah.
Check, 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 check. Okay. Am I live? Not yet? Can you hear me? I think that the battery is dead. The light is not on. So I will use this mic right now if it works. Thank you, Neil.
I don't know if you noticed or not, I don't suppose we can pull that last slide back up. No, never mind. There was a little letter that was between the two Noons, and it's a Vav. Now, you notice the faithful servant was the one with the knees bent, okay? The faithful servant wanting to become the exalted servant is connected through the nail. The nail that put our Savior up on the cross. So, this morning, Rabbi asked me to bring a message on Yom Teruah. Now, if you go to most of your calendars that we use, solar, lunar calendars, you will see that it's called Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah. And that didn't happen until after the temple was destroyed. and it was about the 2nd century. But the biblical name for it is Yom Teruah. Say that with me. Yom Teruah. Don't say Yom Teruah, because that would be a whole different meaning, because Yom is a seed, and Yom means day.
Well, that felt good.
Okay. You know, on Feast of Trumpets, it's Awakening Blast. I think we just had it. Okay. Let's pray. Abba, I just pray, Lord, that you would give me your thoughts, that I would be able to speak only what comes from you and not from me. And I pray, Lord, that you will bless this. May the words of my mouth and meditations of my heart be wholly acceptable to you, my rock and my redeemer. B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach. Amen. Yom Teruah. What is it? Because for most of the body of Messiah out there, what we would call Western Christianity has no clue what it is. There may be some of you here today that have never heard this expression before. How many have never heard of Yom Teruah? Okay. Well, what I want to do this morning is I want to give you an overview of what Yom Teruah is, the various aspects. I'm not going to completely go through the whole study because that would take us several years. But what I want to do is I want to set a 30,000 viewpoint focus on what is Yom Teruah and all of the things that are connected to it. For most of you, a lot of this is going to be review. This is why we go through the Torah portion year after year after year. Because some of us, it takes year after year after year to get it. Other times, we go over year after year after year because there's something new in the scriptures that we haven't seen before. Maybe that would be the case for you this morning. So what is the biblical basis for Yom Teruah? And Mike and Jared did a great job of bringing that forward. Let's go first to Numbers, Bamidbar, 29 verse 1. In the 7th month, on the first day of the month, you are to have a holy convocation. Do not do any kind of ordinary work. It is a day of blowing the shofar for you. It happens on the 1st of Tishri. 1st of Tishri. This is the Hebrew calendar. A little bit different than ours, isn't it? And the Jewish months, in terms of the religious months, starts with the first month being Nisan. That comes in the March and April time frame, and we see the 3 spring feasts. Pesach, or Passover. We see the unleavened bread, the matzot, and we see the first fruits, the bikurim. Those are the 3 spring feasts. And we know, or at least some of us know, what those 3 feasts are representative of. It's all tied to Messiah. Pesach, he was crucified. He was laid in the tomb. Unleavened bread, he arose in first fruits. He's the first fruits from the dead. Then we go 50 days, and we come to what we call, or what the most Western Christianity calls Pentecost. We call Shavuot. Shavuot, and that is not only the giving of the Torah in the Tanakh, in the Torah, but it's also the giving of the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit, to the believers. Then we go for a long period of time through the summer. I believe the summer is the time for fruit ripening. It's a time when the fruit completes its shape It starts the maturing process. And finally, we come to Tishri, which is the 7th month. And we see the 3 fall feasts of Rosh Hashanah, or Yom Teruah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot. And what we see there is that the fruit harvest, up here we had the barley harvest, and we had the wheat harvest. Down here we have the fruit harvest. So now we have Rosh Hashanah, or Yom Teruah coming up. And Tom and Marilyn are over in the land picking the fruit, picking the grapes. I would submit to you that this Yom Teruah is the time for the picking of the fruit in our lives, for us. The first of Tishri. Now, if you are on the Hebrew calendar, you're going to find out that the first of the month is what we call a new moon. And on the first of Tishri, as of first of any other Hebrew month, it doesn't occur until the new moon is sighted. Now what's interesting is that in Yeshua's time and ancient times, the new moon had to be sighted by 2 witnesses. And the 2 witnesses had to be ritually pure. Once you get this in your mind, you had to be ritually pure, and then you had to go and testify that the new moon had come. If there was anything not pure in you, you couldn't testify that this had come. Yom Kippur is the following, and that is when the high priest went into the Holy of Holies one time a year and atoned for the sins of the people. And so you have the fruit harvest, you have the atonement, and then you have the Sukkot. And the Sukkot is when we celebrate the Feast of Tabernacles, where the harvest is complete and we're rejoicing, and it also stands for the millennial kingdom that Yeshua promised. 1,000-year reign of Yeshua on the earth. Now there's another passage that's tied into Yom Teruah. We want to put out this biblical basis, and that is Leviticus, right, 23, verses 23 through 25. And Adonai said to Moshe, "Tell the people of Israel, in the 7th month," which month is it? 7th month, and the name of it is Tishri. Okay. Is the first of the month is to be for you a day of complete rest, for remembering a holy convocation, announced with blast of the shofar. Do not do any kind of ordinary work, and bring an offering made by fire to Adonai. Now I'm going to look at the passage of the scripture that is underlined, because there's some significant words that we need to understand. First of all, it talks about a day of complete rest. Now, in this scripture, the word is Shabbaton. Say Shabbaton. Shabbaton. And it's a cessation, a rest, a Sabbath observance. The second is it's a day of remembering. In this passage, the word is Zikron. Say Zikron. It's a memorial. It's a memorial or a remembrance. The third thing is there's a blast of the shofar. That word in Hebrew is teruah. Say teruah. It's a shout or a blast of war, an alarm, and joy, a trumpet blast. It also says that there needs to be a holy convocation. A holy convocation. Now, convocation is the word mikra. It's a called assembly, a convocation, convoking, reading, proclamation. And then what kind of a convocation? It's a holy convocation, and the word there is Kodesh. Kodesh, say it, Kodesh. It's a holy congregation. And it's set apart, separated, sometimes translated as holy. Now this is the first of the 7th month, and it's to be observed as a Mikra Kodesh, a holy convocation, a set apart convocation. The word Mikra comes from the Hebrew word root kara, which means to call or to read. Thus, a Mikra is an assembly which is gathered together for the purpose of reading. What are they reading? They're reading the scriptures. They're to be read, studied, and proclaimed on Yom Teruah. So, what we're going to find when we get together at 7 o'clock on Wednesday, not on Tuesday, just a reminder, we are going to be celebrating, and we're going to be, in that evening, we are going to be reading and studying the scriptures. Which, if the Lord would come back on that day, what better thing is there to be doing? Furthermore, the first day of the 7th month is to be a Shalom, means a complete cessation from labor. And the word used of the Sabbath day, the Day of Trumpets, or Yom Teruah, the Day of Atonement, or Yom Kippur, the Feast of Tabernacles, or Sukkot, the sabbatical year, every 7 years, there's a Shemitah, and the year of Jubilee, every 50th year. But really interesting is that it's not used with reference of the springtime appointed days. Shabbaton is only used in regards to the feast of the Lord for the fall feast. Something special is going on. This isn't an ordinary Shabbat. This is a Shabbaton. This is like the next level up. Something very special. The opening and closing days of the Feast of Unleavened Bread are not days on which the Shabbaton is called. No work is permitted on the 1st and 7th day of the Unleavened Bread except for the preparation of food. Thus, they are not complete rest. They are not designated as Shabbatons. So the term Shabbaton is used only for those appointed days when no work at all of any kind may be done, including the preparation of food. The book written to the Hebrews discusses at length the rest, the Shabbaton, which will be granted to those who enter Messiah's kingdom when he comes. Let's look at Hebrews chapter 4, verses 4 through 11. For somewhere he has spoken about the 7th day in this way. And God rested on the 7th day from all his works. And again in this passage, they shall never enter my rest. So it remains for some to enter into it. Yet those who formerly had good news proclaimed to them and did not enter because of disobedience. Again, God appoints a certain day, today, saying through David, after so long a time, just as it has been said before, today, if you hear his voice, and do not harden your hearts. For if Yahushua had given them rest, God would not have spoken of another day later on. So there remains a Shabbat rest for the people of God. That's a Shabbaton. For the ones who have entered God's rest has also ceased from his own work, just as God did from his. Let us therefore make every effort to enter that rest, so that no one may fall through the same pattern of disobedience. Shabbaton. Shabbaton. We want to enter the Shabbaton. Only those who are pure can enter the Shabbaton. It's a total cessation of our works. At that point in time, in the Shabbaton that's coming, Yom Teruah, the final fulfillment, Yom Teruah, we will not be working anymore. The day of works will be over. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
Now, let's look at the word Zikron. Zikron. The first day of the 7th month is also to be a Zikron. Say Zikron. Or a memorial in remembrance of something. But the interesting thing, and Rabbi shared with us on Tuesday, we don't know what we're supposed to be remembering. The Bible doesn't tell us. So what we do is we go back to the writings of the sages to understand what exactly was connected to this special feast of the Lord, because it's what we're supposed to do. Now the sages teach is connected with the binding of Isaac, which the Hebrews call the Akedah. The binding of Isaac on Mount Moriah. This, of course, is a pattern of the picture of Messiah being offered up as a sacrifice. Now the ram, the thickets, you remember the ram? It had 2 appendages from its head that it was caught by. Those were its horns, right? That's also 2 shofars on the hoof. Now the sages say that those 2 shofars represent the 2 shofars that will be blown not by angels, but by Adonai himself. The first happened on Mount Sinai. The second is when he signals the calling together of his people. This will be the final fulfillment of Yom Teruah. The experience at Mount Sinai where Yahweh appeared before all Israel. The account in Exodus tells us of a loud trumpet blast on the morning the nation of Israel was on the mountain. Shemot 19:16-20. In the morning of the 3rd day there was a thundering and lightning, a thick cloud on the mountain, and the blast of an exceeding loud shofar. And all the people in the camp trembled. Then Moshe brought the people out of the camp to meet Adonai, God. And they stood at the lowest part of the mountain. They stood. What did we just hear? They stood, not Zadim. Now the entire Mount Sinai was in smoke because Adonai had descended upon it in fire. The smoke ascended like the smoke of a furnace, and the whole mountain quaked greatly. And when the sound of the shofar grew louder and louder, Moshe spoke, and God answered him with a thunderous sound. What would you if you were there and heard that? Then Adonai on Mount Sinai to the top of the mountain. Adonai called Moshe up to the top of the mountain, so Moshe went up. Interesting, because we see the shofar being blown, the voice of Adonai himself. He's blowing the shofar, and what's Moshe doing? He's going up. Hebrews chapter 12, verses 18-21 tells us that the sound of the trumpet blast was so loud that not only the people were trembling at the presence of Adonai, even Moshe himself trembled. Here's what it says. For you have not come to a mountain that can be touched, or to a blazing fire, and to darkness and gloom and storm, and to the blast of the shofar, and a voice whose words made those who heard it beg that not another word be spoken to them. That was loud, and that was frightening. For they could not bear what was commanded. Even if an animal touches the mountain, it shall be stoned. So terrifying was the sight that Moshe said, I am quaking with fear. The appearance with Yahweh was with exceedingly loud sounding of a trumpet, and it was so awesome that all who witnessed shook and trembled. So it seems that this occurrence would have caused God's people to remember, wouldn't you think? Zikron, the day of the Teruah. And that, it was the day of Yahweh himself. It was his appearance. And the trumpet blasts were to recall that monumental event at Mount Sinai. So it stands to reason that another coming of Yahweh is what Yom Teruah is foreshadowing. The trumpet blasts are to announce in our future, and I think that future is not too long now, that in our future we will once again experience the presence of Yahweh in the form of Yeshua. The shofar will sound and we will rise, just like Moshe did. We're going to go up. But Yom Teruah is also a day of remembering for Yahweh. The term remember is often used of Adonai acting on his promises. The theological word book of the Old Testament suggests other meanings for our word besides to remember or to be reminded. Here's what it says. Numerous passages add to the above meanings the additional implication of taking appropriate action. God's remembrance of his covenant results in delivering his people. That was in Exodus 2:24, where God was delivering his people from Egypt. Or preserving them in Leviticus 26:44 and 45. This was preserving them from Babylon. And remembering sin may be tantamount to withholding favor. Hosea 7, verses 1 through 2, where the prophet's talking about the cause for the dysphoria in Babylon, caused because of unfaithfulness. Remembering Hezekiah's past faithfulness resulted in healing, 2 Kings 20, verse 3. And remembering Noah was to make the waters to subside in Bereshit, or Genesis 8:1. For God not to remember iniquity, was to forgive and withhold judgment. We see that in Psalm 79, verses 8 through 9. So let's look at a couple of these instances to bear out this meaning. So we have Noah, and he's floating in the ark on the sea. Everywhere he looks, there's water. And this was because of the great flood. And it was then that Yahweh remembered Noah. Does that mean he forgot about him? No. He brought his attention to Noah. And so God caused a wind to pass over the land, and the water subsided. Bereshit 8:1. And when Adonai remembered Noah, he acted on his behalf. He brought a wind to dry the surface of the earth so Noah would have a place to settle and come off the ark. That's one example. As the Israelites were suffering from bondage in Egypt, the text tells us that Adonai remembered his people. We go to Shemot, or Exodus 2, verses 24 through 25. God heard their sobbing and remembered his covenant with Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. And God saw B'nai Israel, and he was concerned about them. He was going to do something to bring them out of the situation. And it was from that time that Adonai acted on behalf of his people to bring plagues on Egypt and to rescue them with a great deliverance. Now it is in this context that the word Zikron is used of Yom Teruah. This is the appointed day for Yahweh to remember his people, to remember his covenant, and to remember his promises. And remembering of these things moves Yahweh to act and rescue his people. Yom Teruah is the day when Adonai remembers and acts to fulfill his promises to send the Messiah back to gather his people and to deliver them from where they are into a new existence. The church refers to this as the rapture. Now let's dig in the Tanakh, the Old Covenant, to find some further meaning of this day of trumpets. In the Torah, trumpets were used as a signal to move. And we look at Numbers 10, verses 5 through 10. When you sound the trumpet the first time, the camp of those camped on the east is to set out. And when you sound the trumpet blast the second time, the camp of those camped on the south is to set out. Short blast, the staccato blast, will be the signal for the moving out. To gather the whole national community, you are to sound the sustained blast, but not the short blast. The son of Aaron will blow the trumpets. This is to be an eternal ordinance for you, as well as for your generations to come. Whenever you go to war in your own land against the enemy who is hostile to you, you are to sound short blasts of alarm. Then you'll be remembered before Adonai your God. You'll be remembered before Adonai your God, and be delivered from your enemies. Also, at your days of rejoicing, feasts, and new moons, you are to blow the trumpets over your burnt offerings and fellowship offerings. They will be a reminder, zikron, for you before Adonai your God. I am Adonai your God. Now, the Hebrew word teruah means a shout, a blast of war, an alarm, a shout of joy. We already covered that. The primary meaning is to raise a noise by shouting or with an instrument, especially a horn. Numbers 10:7. Or the traditional ram's horn, the shofar, in Joshua 6:5. It is also used in the sense of rituals of the Israelite tabernacle in 1 Samuel 4, verse 5, to describe the exaltation of the people of Israel when the Ark of the Covenant was brought to the camp. And later in Israel's history, in the first Commonwealth of Israel, the same root is used to describe the exaltation of the people when David brings the ark back to Jerusalem. The poetic description in this Psalm 45:7 and later glorification of the king at his enthronement by acclamation in 1 Samuel 10:24 has been selected by some scholars as evidence of an enthronement ritual that's found in contemporary societies. Now, some of us that are old enough to remember when Queen Elizabeth, not many of you, but some of you, believe me, talk about trumpet blasts. It was a royal coronation. So now in Numbers 10, the teruah refers to the signal for the sons of Israel to pick up their tent poles and travel, or to go to war. And in the story of the fall of Jericho, the teruah is the shout on the seventh day that results in the crumbling of the walls of the city. And so we read in Joshua 6:5 and verse 20, it will be when they make the long blast with the ram's horn, when you hear the sound of the shofar, have all the people shout a loud shout. Then the wall of the city will fall down flat, and the people will go up. Have we heard that before? Sound of the shofar, and the people will go up. Everyone straight ahead. So when the shofarot, which is plural, the shofar, blew, the people shouted. And when the people heard the sound of the shofar, the people shouted a loud shout, and the wall fell down flat. So the people went up into the city, everyone straight ahead, and they captured the city. The teruah is also associated with the announcement of the year of Yovel, which is the year of Jubilee. Then on the 10th day of the 7th month of Yom Kippur, you are to sound a shofar blast. You are to sound the shofar all throughout your land. You are to make the 50th year holy and proclaim liberty throughout the land to all its inhabitants. It is to be a jubilee to you when each of you is to return to his own property, and each of you is to return to his family. So to kind of pull this together, teruah is used of a war cry, an announcement to move, a shout of praise, a shout to announce a joyous occasion, or the sound made by the blowing of the shofar, the ram's horn. Thus, Yom Teruah is a day which remembers or depicts a great day which will elicit a shout of joy from those who worship Yahweh, and the announcement of a joyous occasion by the blowing of the shofar. For believers who know that they're going to go with Yeshua, it's not a frightening day. It's a day of joy.
Amen.
Hallelujah. Amen.
It's a day of joy. Now let's look on. When we come to the Brit Hadashah, the new covenant, we find that the teruah, the blowing of the shofar, is connected to gathering together of Adonai's people by the Messiah. 1 Thessalonians 4, verses 16 through 17. For the Lord himself shall come down from heaven with a commanding shout. Teruah, with the voice of the archangel, and with the blast of God's shofar. Whose shofar? God's. And the dead in Messiah will rise first. Here Yeshua is seen coming down from heaven, accompanied by a loud command. The Greek word used here for this loud command is kalisma. Say kalisma. It means a shout, a command, a signal, a summons to carry out a procedure. I would say it's going to be carrying out a mission. This word corresponds perfectly with the Hebrew word teruah. This shout, which is given at this time, is the teruah that occurs on Yom Teruah, the day of the shout. Now, with Messiah coming down out of heaven in the loud trumpet call, with the teruah, the shout, there is a resurrection of those who have died in Messiah. Paul describes this resurrection that takes place at this time. 1 Corinthians 15, 51 through 52. Behold, I tell you a mystery. We shall not all sleep, but we shall all be changed in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last shofar. For the shofar will sound, and the dead will be raised incorruptible, and we will be changed. What's that telling us? There's going to be a resurrection of the dead, and we are going to be changed.
Amen.
We are going to be like him. Who's him?
Yeshua.
Now, to kind of bring some more clarity to this wonderful day that I'm looking forward to, and I hope you are too. There's some other names for this day. One is Zikron Teruah, which means the memorial of the blowing of the trumpets. And this goes back to the Numbers 29:1 verse that we read earlier. On the first day of the 7th month, hold a sacred assembly and do no regular work. It is a day for you to sound the trumpets, the shofars. Based on the biblical designation, the ancient observances of Rosh Hashanah are often simply referred to as the Feast of Trumpets, a day of sounding trumpets in the temple and throughout Israel. Tuesday night. I'm sorry, Wednesday night. See, we're going to hear them blowing. They're going to blow 100 times at least. Now it's interesting that the last trump, the 100th trump, that's what it's talking about there. The last shofar. Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is another name for this day. It's the day of hiding or concealment. Zechariah 2, verses 1 through 4. Gather together, O shameless nation, before the decree is brought forth, before the day passes away like chaff, before Adonai's burning anger comes upon you, before the day of Adonai's anger comes upon you. Seek Adonai, all you humble of the land, who have executed his judgment. Seek righteousness, seek meekness. Perhaps you will be hidden on the day of Adonai's wrath. For Gaza will be abandoned, and Ashkelon will be a wasteland. Ashdod will be driven out at noon, and Ekron will be uprooted. Hidden, cassette. The key to being hidden is right there in verse 3. Righteousness and meekness. Righteousness and meekness. Now, I think we have a pretty good understanding what righteousness is all about. That's being right with God, being right with the Torah. But what about this meekness? Does that mean we just roll over? No. Meekness means submission, obedience, and humility. Does that characterize our lives? It's during this time that we need to ask that question. Also, just as a side note, it's interesting, on August the 14th, 2005, on the 9th of Av, one of the first steps towards the day of the Lord was that Gaza was forsaken. Think about that. So it's coming back to this passage. Psalm 27:5, for in the day of trouble he will hide me in his sukkah, conceal me in the shelter of his tent, and set me high upon the rock. Conceal me, cassette. Both Jewish and Christian theology view Satan, Hebrew for adversary, as the great enemy of God and his people. And what they say is, all this blowing of shofars confuses him. Praise God.
He's getting confused. Why is he confused? Why is he shaking? Because he knows that his time is up. And so it confounds Satan. So many believe that the blast of the shofar in Rosh Hashanah would confuse Satan and lead him to believe that Messiah has arrived and his authority had ended. Good idea, because it's exactly what's going to happen.
Hallelujah.
And also known as the Yom Kiddushim. This is the day of the consummation of the wedding. There are two significant days in the ancient Jewish wedding. The Erusin, which is the betrothal, and the Kiddushim, which is the consummation. Joel 2:16 through 15 says, "Gather the people, sanctify the congregation, assemble elders, gather the children, even those nursing at breast. Let the bridegroom come out from his bedroom and the bride from her chamber." What's that referring to? That's the consummation of the wedding. That's a consummation of the marriage. Revelation chapter 19, verses 7 through 8 says, "Let us rejoice and be glad. Let us give him the glory. For the time has come for the wedding of the Lamb, and his bride has prepared herself." Who's the bride? We need to be prepared.
Amen.
Fine linen, bright and clean, has been given to her to wear. The bride needs to prepare herself for this consummation of the wedding. And based upon this, what I've just shared, the consummation of the wedding is going to occur on Yom Teruah.
Amen.
Jeremiah 23, 5 through 6. "Behold, the days are coming, declared the Lord, when I will raise up for David a righteous branch, and he will reign as king, and act wisely and do justice and righteousness in the land. In his days, Judah will be saved, and Israel will dwell securely, and this is his name by which he will be called, Lord our righteous." This is one of the names that Yeshua is going to be called. The Lord our righteousness. Can you say that? The Lord our righteousness. Now what's interesting is Jeremiah goes on in chapter 33, verse 16. Here's what he says. "In those days, Judah will be saved, and Jerusalem will dwell in safety, and this is the name by which she will be called, the Lord our righteousness." You know what this is telling us? You know, in most societies, when the bride gets married, she takes on the name of her husband. That's going to be one of the new names that's written down in heaven. The Lord is our righteousness. Notice, we're betrothed, but we don't live together yet. In Jeremiah 2:2, God reminds them of that. "Go proclaim to the heirs of Jerusalem, saying, Thus says the Lord, I remember concerning you the devotion of your youth, the love of your betrothals, your following after me in the wilderness through a land not sown." And Hosea chapter 2, verse 19 through 20. "And I will make for them a covenant on that day with the beasts of the field, the birds of the heavens, and the creeping things on the ground, and I will abolish the bow, the sword, the war from the land, and I will make you lie down in safety. I will betroth you to me forever. I will betroth you to me in righteousness and in justice, in steadfast love and mercy. I will betroth you to me in faithfulness, and you shall know the Lord." This is our current standing. We see a New Testament, or a new covenant. Matthew 1, verse 18, it says, "Now the birth of Yeshua, the Messiah, happened this way, when his mother Miriam was engaged to Joseph. But before they came together, she was found to be pregnant with the Ruach HaKodesh." Engaged, betrothed, the Erusin. Before they came together, the Kiddushim. We are betrothed to Yeshua, but we have not yet completed the marriage. On Yom Teruah, we will complete the marriage. The states the bridal price, the promises of the groom, and the rights of the bride. That's exactly what this is. The bride must give her consent. Romans 10, 8 through 10. We're going to confess him. If we confess with our mouth, Yeshua is Adonai. Yeshua is the Lord. That's us saying, I do. The children at the foot of Mount Sinai in Exodus 24:3 said, Na'aseh v'nishma. We will hear and we will do. That was their betrothal, right there. The gifts were given to the bride. What gifts are we given? The gifts of the Spirit, aren't we? Then the woman involved would do a mikvah, or water immersion, ritually clean, and an act that she was going to separate herself from her past life. Now she's going to learn how to be a good wife. Now she spends her time learning how to do it. That's exactly what we should have been doing ever since we became engaged to Yeshua.
Amen.
After the mikvah, following her engagement, salvation, we learn how to live as his bride. Ezekiel 16:8-9. Again I passed by and saw you, and behold, you were truly at the time of love. I spread the corner of my garment over you, and covered you with nakedness, covered your nakedness. I swore to you and entered into a covenant with you, says Adonai, so you became mine. Then I washed you with water. The bride now spends her time learning how to please her husband. Remaining pure, she is now betrothed. A cup of wine is shared with the betrothed bride-to-be. The bridegroom would make this statement, I go to prepare a place for you. John 14:3. This is what Yeshua did. This is a place known as the chamber, or the wedding chamber. I'm not going to read that for the sake of time. But Matthew 24:36 says, but on that day and hour no one knows, not even the angels of heaven nor the Son, but the Father alone. Because he said, when he was asked, he says, I don't know. Only the Father knows. And when the bridegroom returned, it would always be accompanied with a shout, the teruah. Behold, the bridegroom cometh.
Amen.
It was in the middle of the night. There was a shout, according to Matthew 25:6. The teruah, look, the bridegroom, come out to meet him. And then the bridegroom would take his bride and take her into the marital chamber, where the marriage was consummated. On Yom Teruah, the marriage is completed, and we live with the bridegroom forever, the Messiah. Is anyone interested in that? Okay. Those of you who are sleeping, you might have missed it. You want to be one of those virgins that didn't have your oil. All right. It's also known as Yom Hadin, the Judgment Day. So named by the rabbis because it begins the 10 days of awe, the traditional time of God's judgment. Consequently, repentance has always been foremost in the Jewish mind. In Judaism, it's believed that every year on this day, the heavenly court is in session, and the books are opened, and God looks over every person's account, and he reviews his investment in us. Daniel 7:10-11. A river of fire was flowing and coming out from before him. Thousands of thousands attended him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him, and the court was seated, and the books were opened. Now the sages teach that there's at least 3 different books. There's the book of the righteous, there's the book of the unrighteous, and what I call the book of the tweeners. And that's what the 10 days is about. If your name isn't written in the book of life, or your name isn't written in the book of the unrighteous, but you know what that means, then that final time, concentrated final time, you have to get ready before the second coming.
Amen.
2 Corinthians 5:10, for we must all appear before the judgment seat of Messiah, so that each one may receive what is due him for the things he did while in his body. The Sefer Zikron. 1 Corinthians 3:13-15. Each one's work will become clear, for the day will show it, because it is to be revealed by fire, and the fire itself will test each one's work, what sort it is. If anyone's work is built on the foundation survives, he will receive a reward. If anyone's work is burned up, he will suffer loss. He himself will be saved. The last one, and that is Yom HaMelech. This is the day of the king's coronation. Yeshua left us as Ben David, as the Messiah Ben David. What does that mean? He left us as the suffering servant. Isaiah talks about this. But you know, when he comes back and steps foot on Mount Moriah, he's going to step foot on the range of Mount Moriah, which includes the Mount of Olives. He's going to come down, he's going to step foot on there. He's going to be king.
Amen.
He's going to be king over all. The kingdom is coming. The kingdom come that we've been praying about in the Lord's Prayer, the disciples' prayer for years, is going to come about.
Amen.
Kingdom is coming. And so, I have many more things I could say, but for the sake of time, I'm going to cut it short. But we are going to be there.
Amen.
We are going to see Yeshua crowned. Isaiah 47, 6 through 9. Sing praises to God. Sing praises to our King. Sing praises, for God is the King over all the earth. Sing praises with a skillful song. God reigns over the nation. God sits on his holy throne. The princes of the peoples are gathered as a people of the God of Abraham, for the shields of earth belong to him. He is greatly exalted.
Amen. Thank you, Lord.
Psalm 47 is known as the coronation psalm. Psalm 47:5. God has gone up amidst shouting. It's related to the teruah. Adonai amidst the shouting of the shofar. Yom Teruah. This psalm, Psalm 47, I encourage you to read it, because I believe that this is probably going to be sung at the coronation ceremony. And we're going to be there.
Amen.
Those who love Yeshua, who are looking for his coming, who have vowed a life of righteousness, who are living righteously, we're going to come into his presence. We're going to be rewarded, and we are going to see our King crowned.
Amen. Hallelujah. Bless his name.
Now, there are people who don't see any significance in the day of Yom Teruah. But I think, based on what I've already said, that maybe it should be important to you.
Amen.
Because it's important to me. Why? Because Adonai commanded it. He foresaw from the beginning that this day was going to come. This is the day when he's going to set everything right. This is the day of refreshment we have been looking for. Now, would anyone want to miss the shofar blast when we rise to meet Yeshua in the air? Does anyone want to miss the wedding day where we are united forever with Yeshua? Does anyone want to miss the rewards and the blessings of being his forever and ever? So the question I leave you with today is, are you prepared? If this year, on Yom Teruah, the shofar will blow, and we will be taken up with Yeshua. Because as I always say, when the horn toots, we're going to scoot.
We're going to see. I love that.
I don't know about you, but I'm excited about Yom Teruah, because it is significant in the life of a believer. And I am so sorry that so many in Western Christianity don't have a clue as to what this is all about.
Amen.
There's so much, and there's so much more. And we'll be talking more about it on Wednesday night. So I'm going to ask Mark. Mark, would you come? While he's coming, I'd like the prayer teams to come up forward. If there's anyone who needs prayer today, I want you to come forward. Maybe you understand that at this point, coming this close to Yom Teruah, you're not where you need to be. God respects your repentance. This could be the new day for you, so that you are ready. So when the shofar blows, you are ready. You are pure. You are righteous before Him, and you're ready to go into the bridal chamber. All right.
Before I say the summary, I just want to ask everybody during your prayer time, even today, and all the way up to Wednesday, just do special praying for Rabbi, that the Lord would give him wisdom and insight and special vision. I really feel that we should be doing that. So if you'd like to stand. Yevarecha Adonai vayishmarecha, Yair Adonai pano velecha vichunecha, Yisa Adonai pano velecha v'yasem lecha shalom. May the Lord bless you and keep you and be gracious to you and shine His face upon you. May He turn His countenance towards you and give you His peace. Amen.